I'm going to read the modern translation of the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, as the original Old English version might be difficult to understand. I'll narrate that one as well, if there's demand. Let me know in the comments. Now on with this chilling 200-year-old poem. 3 young men are walking together to a wedding when one of them is detained by a grizzled old sailor. The young wedding guest angrily demands that the mariner let go of him, and the mariner obeys. But the young man is transfixed by the ancient mariner's glittering eye and can do nothing but sit on a stone and listen to his strange tale. The mariner says that he sailed on a ship out of his native harbour, below the kirk, below the hill, below the lighthouse top, and into a sunny and cheerful sea. Hearing bassoon music drifting from the direction of the wedding guest imagines that the bride has entered the hall, but he's still helpless to tear himself from the mariner's story. The mariner recalls that the voyage quickly darkened as a giant storm rose up in the sea and chased the ship southward. Quickly, the ship came to a frigid land of mist and snow, where ice, mast high, came floating by. The ship was hemmed inside this maze of ice, but then the sailors encountered an albatross, a great seabird. As it flew around the ship, the ice cracked and split, and a wind from the south propelled the ship out of the frigid regions into a foggy stretch of water. The albatross followed behind it, a symbol of good luck to the sailors. A pained look crosses the mariner's face, and the wedding guest asks him, "Why look'st thou so?" The mariner confesses that he shot and killed the albatross with his crossbow. At first, the other sailors were furious with the mariner for having killed the bird that made the breezes blow. But when the fog lifted soon afterward, the sailors decided that the bird had actually brought not the breezes, but the fog. They now congratulated the mariner on his deed. The wind pushed the ship into a silent sea where the sailors were quickly stranded. The winds died down, and the ship was as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. The ocean thickened, and the men had no water to drink. As if the sea were rotting, slimy creatures crawled out of it and walked across the surface. At night, the water burned green, blue, and white with death fire. Some of the sailors dreamed that a spirit, 9 fathoms deep, followed them beneath the ship from the land of mist and snow. The sailors blamed the mariner for their plight and hung the corpse of the albatross around his neck like a cross. A weary time passed. The sailors became so parched, their mouths so dry, that they were unable to speak. But one day, gazing westward, the mariner saw a tiny speck on the horizon. It resolved into a ship, moving toward them. Too dry-mouthed to speak out and inform the other sailors, the mariner bit down on his arm. Sucking the blood, he was able to moisten his tongue enough to cry out, "A sail! A sail!" The sailors smiled, believing they were saved. But as the ship neared, they saw that it was a ghostly skeletal hull of a ship, and that its crew included 2 figures. Death, and the nightmare life in death, who takes the form of a pale woman with golden locks and red lips, and thicks man's blood with cold. Death and life and death began to throw dice, and the woman won, whereupon she whistled 3 times, causing the sun to sink to the horizon, the stars to instantly emerge. As the moon rose, chased by a single star, the sailors dropped dead, one by one, all except the mariner, whom each sailor cursed with his eye before dying. The souls of the dead men leapt from their bodies and rushed by the mariner. The wedding guest declares that he fears the mariner, with his glittering eye and his skinny hand. The mariner reassures the wedding guest that there's no need for dread. He was not among the men who died, and he is a living man, not a ghost. Alone on the ship, surrounded by 200 corpses, the mariner was surrounded by the slimy sea and the slimy creatures that crawled across its surface. He tried to pray, but was deterred by a wicked whisper that made his heart as dry as dust. He closed his eyes, unable to bear the sight of the dead men each of whom glared at him with the malice of their final curse. For 7 days and 7 nights the mariner endured the sight, and yet he was unable to die. At last the moon rose, casting the great shadow of the ship across the waters. Where the ship's shadow touched the waters, they burned red. The great water snakes moved through the silvery moonlight, glittering, blue, green, and black. The snakes coiled and swam and became beautiful in the mariner's eyes. He blessed the beautiful creatures in his heart. At that moment, he found himself able to pray, and the corpse of the albatross fell from his neck, sinking like lead into the sea.